Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. Means we're brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Hope that work week is in the rearview mirror. If it's not, we'll get you to the finish line. Here we got Jordan Kitchens, Paul O'Neill back there on the ones and twos, and a lot to do over the next 2 hours. We'll have Preston Guy with us, TigerBait.com. He's here in 15 minutes. Got to get you ready for the NFL slate to come on Sunday. Talk Saints and Bucs a little bit later, including my pick. Chris Marler, LouisianaSports.net, as well as Locked On Gamecocks and various other things that he does. He's going to join us from Atlanta. He'll be in the building tomorrow for the SEC Championship game, so we'll talk to Marler at 2 o'clock. LSU basketball is a really big game on Sunday against Texas Tech. I want to take some time to look at that. I didn't know a ton about Texas Tech entering this morning. I did about 45 minutes of looking into the Red Raiders. They're good, and it's going to be a heck of a game coming up on Sunday. I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll get an announcement some point in the next 2 hours, I think in an hour and a half right now, from Deuce Gerald's over there in Atlanta, where he plans to play his college football. Committed to LSU. We'll see if he signs that way. And so we'll start things kind of in that direction today. I planned on, when I sat down at my desk this morning, a little bit after 8 o'clock, I'm going, okay, how's this show going to work out? And here's what I do on Friday usually. Well, what's the lead of the show? And so, well, the lead of the show is probably whatever breaks with LSU football between now and 1 o'clock. That gave me 5 hours for news. And you had a lot of things that were coming, we thought. Lamar Brown has not put pen to paper yet. Deuce Gerald's has not put pen to paper yet. We haven't gotten any sort of announcement at all about Blake Baker. Think there's some news coming out about LSU defensive line coach, and potentially could Elijah Robinson take that job. And to this point, like, none of that has come down the pike. The only thing that has happened today was Trenton Henderson did sign on the dotted line and submit his paperwork to LSU. Trenton Henderson, a 4-star consensus prospect, an edge rusher from Pensacola, was at one point ranked a 5-star recruit. He's a top 10 edge rusher in the country by 24/7 and ESPN. He's a top 150 prospect by all 3 national services. He committed to LSU back in July, and that was a big get for LSU. And you never really felt like he was going to get away until Brian Kelly was let go. There's uncertainty on LSU's defensive staff. You're not sure if Kevin Peoples is going to be here. Maybe he goes with Blake Baker if Blake Baker is to leave. Like, we're not sure about any of that stuff. And the uncertainty created some indecision from LSU's defensive line prospects. And you look at this defensive line class: Lamar Brown, Richard Anderson, Deuce Gerald's, Trenton Henderson. 4 big-time recruits, top 150 recruits. None of them signed on Wednesday. That was the first day you could put pen to paper. None of them signed. And you understand why. There's just a little bit of indecision because there's uncertainty at LSU. And ultimately, there's a reasonable chance that LSU could get all 4 of those guys into this class, and Henderson became the 3rd. You got yesterday, you got the signatures from Richard Anderson, and then you got today Henderson, and Gerald's is going to announce in 90 minutes, and Lamar Brown, the indication is he's going to sign with LSU, and hopefully you can get all 4 of those guys. But Henderson made that official earlier today, holding off Auburn, holding off Florida State. So great job by LSU to make that happen. And I'll say this. I don't know that LSU's staff, whether that's Lane Kiffin or Blake Baker in these instances, and certainly not Frank Wilson, I don't think there's anybody at LSU who could have spoken definitively about the future. Like, you have Lane Kiffin, who just got to LSU. Like, he just got his feet on the ground. You got Blake Baker, who very clearly is entertaining other options, as he should be. It's his career, as he should be. And Frank Wilson's future, very much up in the air. So these guys don't have anything really solid to hold on to. They don't have a relationship with Kiffin. They don't know if Frank's going to be there, don't know if Blake Baker's going to be there, certainly don't know if Kevin Peoples or Kyle Williams is going to be there. And they are still signing on the dotted line. And I'm inferring this. This is not something I'm aware of officially. I'm inferring this. It feels like LSU is doing a really good job with organization and finances to close this recruiting class. You have had two defections from this class. That's it. When you talk about a coaching change and you talk about this era of NIL, that's pretty rare. And you had a couple of kids that LSU's new staff kind of told, hey, you might want to look elsewhere, especially wide receiver. But you're not losing these guys. And to me, it feels like that's LSU stepping up financially and making sure that these players have what's been promised to them, and maybe in some cases more. I'm not sure. But that feels like the case. If it's not, great. But it just feels like the case. Now, I want to keep hitting this grab bag of LSU topics that was potentially going to lead. And since there's no news, I'm just going to kind of address where we sit right now. Elijah Robinson is not somebody we've talked about to this point. Elijah Robinson is perhaps a name you know. Maybe not if you're an LSU fan. If you're kind of a just LSU, you may not. If you really are into the internet and message boards and recruiting and go what's going on in the SEC, you're probably aware of Elijah Robinson. He was Jimbo Fisher's defensive line coach the entire time at Texas A&M. And when Jimbo Fisher was fired, he took over as interim head coach because the team really rallied around him. He's known as a dynamic recruiter. He had commitments at Texas A&M from Gabe Relaford and Dominic McKinley. And when it was determined that Elijah Robinson was not going to get the head coaching job and was not going to be the defensive coordinator, and in fact, he was going to go be the defensive coordinator at Syracuse, try to take a step up at Syracuse, well, Gabe Relaford and Dominic McKinley from Shreveport and Lafayette went, love you, coach, but I'm going to go to LSU. I'm not going to upstate New York. But he's a great recruiter, thought of as a great relationship builder, and a heck of a defensive line coach as well. And it didn't work out over the last 2 seasons at defensive coordinator at Syracuse. So much so the head coach of Syracuse has announced publicly that Elijah Robinson will be a co-defensive coordinator now and defensive line coach as opposed to the defensive coordinator. Read into that. That's a demotion. So Elijah Robinson is much on the market. And we know that he is in Baton Rouge right now. Now, nothing's official as far as being the defensive line coach, but this would be a pretty splashy hire by Lane Kiffin. Football Scoop last night put out the information that they felt that there was a real potential that Elijah Robinson would be the defensive line coach at LSU. Again, nothing official, but this would be a splash. Now, what does that mean for Kyle Williams? That his time in Baton Rouge is very likely done. And look, I think it's a stretch to say I talked to Kyle Williams about this. Literally, I did, but it was in an interview at the Baton Rouge Alumni Association's chapter annual fundraiser in August. He was up there in front of the entire crowd, and I was interviewing him. So it's not like me and Kyle were chatting it up on the phone, or I went over to his house and we kicked back on the back patio and we're chatting about it. It was literally in a public situation at a fundraiser. But I said, like, you just got done with an NFL career. You're coaching in Ruston, where you're from. You can play golf at Squire Creek. He's a great golfer. Squire Creek's the best golf course in the state of Louisiana. I was like, why would you come down here? He's like, I wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to help LSU. I knew that I'd be comfortable here. My family could move here. I know the area. Like, it was just a very comfortable thing to come do. But Kyle Williams doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to coach. And I feel like if Kyle Williams wants to be a defensive line coach next year, he will be a defensive line coach next year. My opinion on that is it'd probably be in the NFL, but he can get that job. He's that respected in football. He's obviously got an incredible acumen. Look at this defensive line class I just talked about. 4 top 150 recruits that potentially could sign with LSU, assuming Lamar Brown signs on the dotted line and Deuce Gerald signs on the dotted line. Like, Kyle Williams did a great job recruiting, and LSU's defensive line play was good this year. But doesn't look like he's going to be back. And it's very likely, very possible, if not likely, that Elijah Robinson is next up. You got to cross some hurdles to get there. You got to get the paperwork done. You got to get him in the building and working. But that's a guy who has already recruited the state of Louisiana 2 guys to Texas A&M. And this is not number 2 in the country, Texas A&M, that he recruited them to. This is a guy who recruited them to Jimbo Fisher's Texas A&M. Oh, by the way, recruited Walter Nolan, 5-star. Oh, by the way, like that huge monster class that didn't work out at all Elijah Robinson helped put that together. And there were some really good players in that class. They just didn't all help Texas A&M. They kind of dispersed elsewhere. But I think that would be a really good hire for LSU. And I talked about this yesterday. What Lane Kiffin does on the defensive staff perspective is a big, big deal. It matters on the offense side too, but Lane's in charge of that. And you feel like that's going to be a stable and successful side of the football. The defense is where you're going to have to put some work in and make sure that that's elite level staffing. And Elijah Robinson would be a heck of an add to that staff if it happens. The question is Blake Baker on that side, and this is kind of wrapping up that grab bag that we went through with the defensive line recruits and with the defensive line coach and with Blake Baker and with Lamar Brown and like all those things. Blake Baker still has not made a public decision. It is our understanding that Tulane and Memphis are both very, very interested in his services. It is our understanding that he is wrestling with this decision. And it's not one of those deals where it's a slam dunk that Baker is absolutely going to go be a head coach at his alma mater or absolutely going to go be a head coach at Memphis. I think both of those jobs are really good ones. But the question becomes this for Blake Baker. Do you want to go be a head coach for the first time for a relatively similar paycheck at the Group of Five level? Defensive coordinator in the SEC, Group of Five head coach, probably similar paychecks. I haven't seen any offers, but it's reasonable assumption they're pretty similar. Or do you want to do the Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, Dan Mullen thing where you wait for a bigger SEC job? Like Dan Mullen left Florida for Mississippi State. Dan Lanning left Georgia for Oregon. Kirby Smart left Bama for Georgia. Like, those are coordinators, big names, big programs, and then you take a job. He's got an option, and I think he's wrestling with it. My guess is the same as it was 24 hours ago when we had this discussion. I believe he'll be Tulane's head coach. That is a guess. It's not sourced, not official by any stretch, but it's my opinion based on the information that we've kind of gathered. He absolutely, like we talked about with Lane Kiffin, he absolutely could wake up today or tomorrow, Tulane plays tonight, and go, all right, it's time to go. And go. He absolutely could wake up today or tomorrow and go, I think I want to stay here and chase championships. Either way, I support Blake in either one of those, and I think both of them would be very reasonable decisions. Just depends on what he decides to do. So that's kind of putting a bow on all things LSU that have gone on in the last 24 hours. I'm assuming that I'll get some sort of information on Twitter over the next hour and 45 minutes, and when that information comes on anything that happens, we'll just pass that along and react to it. Shout out Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. They bring you our Friday shows. Looking for a late lunch just after 1 o'clock? Get on by Government between Jefferson and Foster. Get you a big old shrimp po' boy. Get you one of their platters, the jumbo Gulf shrimp, crispy fried catfish, crispy shoestring fries. They got your coleslaw, honey butter rolls, beignet bites for a snack, tackle box kid meals for the kids. If you're looking to go watch some high school football and want to get something to eat before you head out tonight, Corks is a great option for that. And if you got a game watch party for the SC Championship or even for the Saints on Sunday, Corks loves to feed in bulk, and that also includes Christmas lunches. If you want to let Corks do the cooking for you, they can do it. Check them out online at corksfishandshrimp.com. That's corksfishandshrimp.com. We'll come back to Preston Guy next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
Been a crazy week in LSU football. Here to kind of put a bow on all of that. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. New dad, second time ever. Preston, congrats to the Guy family, and appreciate you giving us a little time on this Friday. How are you?
I appreciate you for having me, hon.
So let's talk about Lane Kiffin first, and then we'll get into recruiting. It's done. How do you feel about it, and what's your impression been through a week?
Yeah, first off, hats off to Verge Osbury and the entire LSU administration for pulling this off. I mean, LSU was certainly the best job on the market, but with all the turmoil they were handed, I really had a gut feeling this wasn't going to end well. Well, it turns out you didn't get your number one guy. You got everyone's number one guy. Was it a messy exit for Lane Kiffin? Sure it was. But if you think about it, all the parties kind of acted the way you might expect them to act. Ole Miss wasn't going to let him coach in the playoffs. Lane Kiffin tried every trick in the book to try to continue coaching his team, even some tricks I might not endorse, but that's neither here nor there. And LSU was willing to wait for him to let him coach that team. So, I mean, everybody was kind of doing their part to make it happen. If you think about it, it's a messy situation, and it certainly is unprecedented, but a 12-team playoff has only been around for 1 year prior to this. So I assume we're probably going to see more similar situations like this in the future. So anyways, I love that LSU got a tactician. Lane Kiffin is obviously a brilliant offensive mind. Looks like one of the first things that's going to be happening is he'll be losing a brilliant defensive mind, as Blake Baker does appear to be heading to Tulane. But that's the way you want to lose coordinators. You want to hire really good coordinators, and they get offered head coaching jobs. That's just how this works. So we'll see what kind of work he does. I think it's been a mixed bag so far. Obviously, as the staff starts to solidify and the recruits start to commit, depending on what Lamar Brown does any second here, I'd say that it could be a pretty strong first week for Kiffin.
How do you feel about Charlie Weiss going to coach Ole Miss in the playoff?
I'm fine with it. Doesn't bother me. I mean, it's not like LSU, has any impending massive, colossal games coming up that they need a bright offensive mind for. And it's not like, I also look at it as one of the things like, what's he going to do? Come here and call a bowl game on this putrid offense that hasn't scored 25 points all season? Like, just let it be. let him go stick with his team. I would have been fine with Lane Kiffin sticking with his team. In fact, I would like to see some sort of standard operating policy determined for when a coach of a playoff team determines he wants to take a better job.
Yeah, that's probably a lot to ask, but you got to get cooperation on both ends, like Florida and Tulane have, and certainly when you go in conference, that's generally not going to be the case. So this signing class, it looks like they're going to sign 15, 16 guys here. Obviously, the numbers are low compared to Miami and some of the others, West Virginia, and I think USC that have signed like upwards of 35. But what do you feel about the high school class, knowing what we know about the landscape of roster acquisition anyway?
Well, assuming you get Deuce Geralds and Lamar Brown to actually sign the dotted line, you're bringing in one of the best defensive line classes in America. I mean, you've got the number one player in the country, Lamar Brown, who all indications are that, any minute now he should sign the dotted line with LSU. Richard Anderson, who, our site owner, Mike Scarborough, is calling him the closest thing to Glenn Dorsey since Glenn Dorsey. I mean, that's pretty high, lofty praise, and he's an absolute tank. It's just a very, very impressive. Trenton Henderson just signed his letter of intent. So, it's a very good class. It's not a deep class. Obviously, the glaring hole is going to be no quarterback, but that's of no fault of Lane Kiffin's. He came in swinging for the fences for Landon Duckworth, and he just decided to stick with his guns. And he's swinging for the fences for a few guys. Jason Matthews is set to make a decision, although LSU looks like the odd man out. He's tried to get Chris Henry after Brian Hartline took the USF job. I mean, Kiffin's coming in, and he's taking his shots. There's no doubt about it. It's just, it's tough when you've been recruited for 4 years. A new coach comes in during the signing period or the week of signing day and says, hey, come play for me instead. Tough order, but certainly they're going to have to hit the portal hard for quarterbacks. I think, Hunt, you're going to need 3 quarterbacks from the transfer portal. So it's going to be a tough calling.
That's really difficult to do. We'll see if he can pull it off. That is something that's going to have to be done in January. Let's talk about some of these staffing situations. I don't know if decisions is the right word. Let's start with the news from last night. The Football Scoop put out that Elijah Robinson is here and potentially could join the staff. We know him from Texas A&M, went up to Syracuse, and didn't have the success he wanted calling defenses, but he's got a great track record down here recruiting and developing defensive linemen. How would you feel if Elijah Robinson was on the staff?
No doubt about it. And Elijah Robinson, also a guy who recruited Lamar Brown heavily. That's worth noting as well. When he was at Texas A&M, I should say, not at Syracuse. Look, it's a good. I like the coach stepped up into a bigger role. It didn't work out, and he could step down into a similar role again. We see that working. Look at Lane Kiffin when he was head coach of USC and went to be OC for Bama. Worked out very well. So obviously Elijah Robinson tried his hand at being a full-time DC at Syracuse. They had like the 124th ranked defense in the country. It didn't work out. And now he's looking to, well, if I'm going to be stuck on defensive line or whatever, I might as well look into it. He did a good job, with A&M and their defensive line and taking over that team. So I think that'd be a pretty colossal hire. I can't say I'm not a little surprised to see that Ogeron didn't get a call from his buddy Lane Kiffin for that spot, but it's certainly that's certainly not a shabby name you're calling up there instead.
What are your thoughts on the Kevin Smith running back coach, Frank Wilson running back coach situation that Lane Kiffin's got on his hands here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I'm like everybody else, and I'd love to see Frank stick around. I'm not nuts over Frank Wilson's running back rotation. That being said, he's an elite recruiter. He's got a resume that speaks for itself. He's been able to, this is the guy who brought in Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis at the same time, But ultimately, what really matters is Kiffin's got to bring in the guy who he feels fits his offense best, who feels fits his system best. The minute you start getting into, hey, Lane Kiffin, we're telling you have to keep this coach at this position. That's not a position to be successful. That you don't pay a coach a $91 million contract to tell him, hey, this is who you're going to hire and who you're not. If you're so smart of who to hire and who to not, why pay a coach the big bucks? So that's ultimately my take is whatever makes Kiffin comfortable. If it's Frank Wilson, I'm very happy to see that because of his connections with the state and what he's been able to do for LSU. But it is what it is.
If Blake Baker takes the Tulane job, do you have a thought on who might be next in Baton Rouge calling the defense?
I have a couple thoughts. A couple guys I've been kind of looking at. I don't know that I'd want to go out and put my name on it. I'd say Wake Forest defensive coordinator Scotty Hazelton is a guy to keep an eye on. A guy who had a defense actually very close to LSU's defensive rankings this year and doing it at Wake Forest, albeit in the ACC. But, we'll have to see. It is kind of surprising that both Blake Baker and Pete Golding were the two guys that we were talking about would possibly be the DC if Lane Kiffin came, and both of them are going to be head football coaches. So next man up for Kiffin, I suppose.
We'll see what the next step is for Lane Kiffin. Got to put that staff together once this early signing period wraps. Preston, try to get a little bit of sleep. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, man.
Oh, I will not be getting sleep, but thanks for asking. You have a great weekend, Hunt.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com with us every Friday. Just had a little one there in the Guy house. I get that. I understand how that goes. You just find a way at that point when you're a couple weeks into it. So thanks to Preston for giving us a little bit of time here on this Friday. I got a question. What's Gerald's doing in the chat? Deuce Gerald's is an hour away from making his announcement. He's looking at LSU, obviously where he is committed, looking at Ole Miss, looking at Georgia Tech as well. So we'll keep you up to date on that an hour from now when pen meets paper for Deuce Gerald's. Lamar Brown, as far as I know, is just kind of a wait-and-see thing whenever somebody announces they got his signature. Maybe he sends out a tweet. Maybe one of the programs sends out a tweet. As we've talked about, my understanding is that LSU feels very, very good about getting Lamar Brown's signature. But until you have the signature, who knows? And we don't know what the delay is. I talked about the clerical issue with Richard Anderson from Wednesday. Like, who had a typo? Let's get that cleaned up and send it back. I don't know what the wait is for Lamar Brown at this point. He said back on Tuesday that he was going to take some time and get to know the staff, the new staff, and maybe that's what you're waiting on. Maybe he's waiting for decisions from Blake Baker or Frank Wilson or whatever the case may be. I don't know, but if something happens between now and 3 o'clock, we will let you know what happens, and we'll react to it certainly right here. Our Friday show is brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Got a Saints pick coming up in 15 minutes when we come back. Get you set up for a big weekend in the National Football League. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. When I say redesigning and remodeling, you may think dollar signs, you may think invasive, you may think long-term situations that are just really, really, really disruptive. It doesn't have to be. If you've got a tub that you don't use because you don't have two rugrats like I do that you got to throw in the tub and scrub them down every day at 6:30, and all you do is take a shower, but you do it standing in an old dingy tub, well, get rid of it. Get out. Tub to shower conversion. David is happy to come in, take that tub out, put in a gorgeous brand new shower, and this is something that can be 3 to 4 days, 3 to 5 days, less than a week. You could have a brand new look to your bathroom, brand new functionality to your bathroom. It can all be done with a company that's got 30 years experience of getting it done. Go check out the pictures, onebathandclosets.com. While you're there, you can get that free consultation, sit down with David, chat with him about what he can do for you. Y'all can put together a plan, and if you need financing, they got it. 0% up to 18 months, same as cash. So go check out the website, onebathandclosets.com. It's One Bath and Closets, onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Got a good email from the folks over at LSU just now. It does not affect me at all, but it very well could affect you, so I'll pass it along. LSU football season ticket costs to remain the same in 2026. There will not be a ticket price hike. And for those that aren't aware, this is the home schedule next year. Well, the highlights. You got Clemson coming into Tiger Stadium. You got Alabama coming into Tiger Stadium. You got Texas coming into Tiger Stadium. You got Texas A&M coming into Tiger Stadium. You also have Mississippi State. But those four, Clemson, Bama, Texas, Texas A&M, that's primetime stuff. And it's not exactly easing into the pool for Lane Kiffin, but it's not like he hadn't been in the SEC previously. That's going to be some fireworks inside Tiger Stadium for SEC games and that Clemson game next year, and you won't have to pay more for it, according to the folks over at LSU. So very cool for LSU for that. My media pass and parking pass will still come in, but I can't tailgate with y'all. So you win some, you lose some, is what it is. All right, let's get ready for the weekend in the National Football League. Tier 4, worst football. By the way, today, a perfect bell curve. Not a lot in Tier 4, not a lot in Tier 1, a lot of meat on the bone in Tiers 3 and 2. But we'll start in Tier 4, Titans and Browns. Yuck. Titans have a 48% chance right now for the top pick. It goes to 67% if they lose this game to the Browns. But if they win, down to 28%. The Saints fans got to be interested in that a little bit. May have an eye on Titans at Browns, but it won't be pretty football. We'll see what Shador can do. Broncos are at the Raiders. By the way, coaching matters. Denver's 10-2. The Broncos are on pace to set an NFL sack record this season, and the Raiders allow the second most sacks in the NFL. It's a stat padding day for that Denver defense under Sean Payton. All right, Tier 3, not the best, not the worst. Seahawks are at Atlanta. Seattle is the best in the NFL against the spread this year. Might want to throw some on that. Kirk Cousins, the worst in the NFL, throwing the football down the field this year. And Seattle is the best at limiting completions down the field. Not a great matchup for Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. The Commanders are at the Vikings. J.J. McCarthy is back. So is Jaden Daniels. We learned this an hour ago. Both teams had high hopes this year, and right now both are slated to pick in the top 10. This has not been a good year there in Minnesota or in our nation's capital. All right, Dolphins are at the Jets. The Jets have 3 wins already. Were y'all paying attention to that? They have 3 wins already.
Crazy.
Miami has lost 7 straight games in sub 45 degrees. It will be sub 45 degrees in East. It's not East Rutherford anymore. They're just in. Where are they now? Meadowlands?
I know it's New Jersey.
Maybe they are in East Rutherford. Either way, it's going to be cold, and the Dolphins don't play well. The Jets can win again. Saints would like that. All right, Rams are at the Cardinals. The Cardinals are 0-8 this year against teams that entered their game with the Cardinals with a winning record. 0-8. The Rams, well, they're 9-3. They have a winning record. They're looking for the number 1 seed in the NFC, and they could get closer to that with a win at Arizona. All right, Tier 2, Bengals at the Bills. Bengals have a bad record, but Joe's back now. And Josh Allen, slumping a little bit, has thrown an interception in 4 straight games. Bengals are clinging to slim playoff hopes. Just 6% that Cincinnati could make the playoffs. Steelers and Ravens in Tier 2. They're 6-6. But the winner's in first place in that bad division. Thought to be the best division. It's not the best division. It's not good. The Ravens started 1-5. They could be in first place. They're 5-1 since, and they've had the best defense in the NFL since week 7. So Baltimore coming on after a 1-5 start. The Texans are at the Chiefs. Chiefs win, 55% chance they make the playoffs. Loss, 12% chance they make the playoffs. It's a huge game at home for the Chiefs. Unders are 9-3 in Texans games this year. When the temp is under 40, it will be under 40 on Sunday, so you might want to sprinkle on the under there between the Texans and the Chiefs. Then the best action of the day on Sunday, the Colts are at the Jags. Both teams are 8-4. It's in division. Indianapolis has not won at Jacksonville since 2014. That's a division team they have not beaten in 10 years away from home. The winner, 60% chance to win the division. The loser, just a 20% chance to win the division. So a huge one between Indianapolis and Jacksonville in Jacksonville coming up on Sunday. And then you've got the Bears and the Packers, one of the best rivalries in all of football. The Bears have won 8 of 9 games. Remember I was talking about coaching mattering with Sean Payton? Probably matters with Ben Johnson, too. They've won 8 of 9 and 5 straight. They play Cleveland in Chicago next week. If they can get this game, you could see a situation where they win 7 games in a row and 10 out of 11. The Packers are 6.5-point favorites in this game. That seems really high against a 9-3 Bears team. 6.5 points. I would have to lean Packers there because that line doesn't make a lot of sense. That is getting you ready for the National Football League. How are we feeling, Jordan? We're a bunch of Jimmy's folks on the Bears.
I'm going to be real, man. That is probably one of the most important games of this year.
Yeah.
It's like, is this the same old Bears? Because this is the hump that they have to get over. They cannot beat the Packers.
I'm well aware. Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers have had ownership over that city for 3 decades. 30 years.
That's a long time.
30 years of Rodgers and Favre, and now Love's playing good.
Yes.
While they've had nothing at quarterback. Some McCowns, some Grossmans. It's been bad. It's been bad. Trubisky. It's a bad scene there on the lakefront. But this is a huge game in Green Bay. And the Bears fans are feeling themselves.
Oh, yeah. That's why it's so important, because it's like, yeah, we know the Bears are having this pretty good season, but also it's like, is it make-believe? I've seen a couple of teams they beat. It's, this is the real test to me. This game, and you already spoke about it, but the Texans at the Chiefs, I got to know.
Chiefs could be dead.
Is it over with? Are we looking at the fall of Rome right now?
Here's the question I want to ask you.
Yes.
If it's 0 to 10. 10 means I'm dying for Sean Payton to win another Super Bowl in Denver. 0 means I hate this guy.
Okay.
Where are you on that? I hope the Broncos lose.
4.
You're a 4. Paulie, you're a Saints guy. 10, I'd love it if Sean Payton won a Super Bowl with the Broncos. 0, I hate that guy. I wanted to lose
4.
every game. Where are you?
I'm probably with Jordan. I'm like a
4.
4. Yeah.
That makes sense. There's not hatred there, appreciative
but I don't
there,
like him, yes.
but a little bit jealous probably that he's there and is taking a Denver team that has an elite defense, and he's got Bo Nix playing decent football.
So, like I said, it's more I dislike Sean Payton, but I don't have any.
Is it fair to say it would be a 5 or 6 if the Saints were 9-3?
If the Broncos were in the NFC, it would feel a lot different. It's just because I don't see the Broncos.
But if the Saints were really good and you didn't have to think, well, you left us and we suck, and now you have one of the best records in football.
I'm going to be real, Hunt. If the Saints were really good, I wouldn't even care.
Yeah,
it's like I wouldn't even care about them. But, since we're trash and you're, I'm about to say we're trash and you're doing well. So, it's double birds to Mr. Sean Payton.
All right, I understand. That's a look at the National Football League slate coming up on Sunday. As I mentioned, 2 games in Tier 4, 4 games in Tier 3, 3 games in Tier 2, 2 games in Tier 1. Interesting to see what the Colts and Jags do there. I can't believe it's been 10 years since the Colts won in Jacksonville. That blows my mind. But tough to win on the road, I guess, as they say. All right, let's take a timeout. Our Friday show is brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. When we come back, we'll pick Saints and the Bucs. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. Swing Easy, GCBR.com. Weekend is here. Weather's a little bit chilly. Might not be great to go play on the course, but you want to hit some golf shots, want to play a little golf. You can do that at Swing Easy Golf Club. Just get a tee time or just stop in, Segan at Perkins, grab one of those individual bays. It's not like you're out there with a lot of people. You're packed into your individual room. It's like a living room in there. They got couches and televisions. You can get the music playing, and you can play any course that they've got on those simulators. You can play by yourself. You can have 4, 5, 8 guys in there. you can hit some shots, play some holes, or you can hit balls on the range if you like as well. It's just a great way to play some golf when the weather is not great or you don't have 5 hours to do it. You can do it in an hour and 10 minutes. It's Swing Easy Golf Club, Segan at Perkins. You can find them online at swingeasygcbr.com. Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
All right, little early from Georgia, but that's okay because it's good news. LSU does get a signature from Deuce Gerald's. In 45 minutes, I will talk about this LSU defensive line class. I got it set there. Gerald's was supposed to announce at 2:30. Maybe it was 2:30 Eastern time, and I just misread it. Possible. But Gerald's does sign with LSU, so that's awesome news for LSU. He's the number 3 defensive lineman in the country, according to the folks at Rivals/On3. You add him with Lamar Brown, Trenton Henderson, and with Richard Anderson. It's just a monster defensive line class, and that's a big, big deal for this program when you consider what you've got on the offensive side of the ball, calling shots. To have a defensive front that could potentially have that much talent is a huge, huge deal. So I have time to talk about that. I'm going to do it at 2:30. I want to talk Saints here and make that pick like we do every single week. But I do want to get you all that news. Big, big news for LSU. Awesome that they kept him in the boat. He was looking at Ole Miss pretty hard, looking at Georgia Tech, who made a huge push for him late, and LSU does hold on to Deuce Gerald. So great news for Lane Kiffin and this LSU football program. Big, big, big 3 days on the defensive front thus far. We'll keep you updated if Lamar Brown makes things official here moving forward. So let's transition to the Saints. You know, there was a time there 2 weeks ago where we kind of were feeling okay about the Saints. You'd won a game on the road, and then you go into the bye, and then all of a sudden you look up, and it had been 3 weeks since you had lost a game. And you're like, well, all right, let's see. And then you go out there, and you just don't play very well. And then you lose another game in Miami last week after losing to the Falcons, and it's just like, okay, all that sour taste is back. So now you go on the road to play the team that's in first place in your division. The Buccaneers are the class of the division. I know the Panthers have played very well. They've very much impressed me and have done far better than anyone would have imagined they've done. But still, Tampa is in first place by half a game and has the easiest remaining schedule in the division. So they're the favorites here, and for good reason. They've been the class of the division for a couple of years. So now the Saints go to Tampa and to see what they can do. And before we get into this week's game, I thought it was relevant to go back and look at the last time these two teams played in New Orleans. And that was a poor exercise to go through because it was an awful football game for the Saints. It was fine for Tampa. It was awful for the Saints. This is the game where Spencer Rattler lost his job. And Rattler comes out there in the first half. The Saints can only produce a field goal. He goes 15 of 21 with just a truckload of checkdowns. He throws an interception, sacked 3 times, QBR of 11.9. And finally, Kellen Moore goes, we got to make a change. So they go to Tyler Shuck, and he gets the ball down the field a little bit more, but they still literally don't score a single point in the second half. His QBR was 6.4. He was sacked twice, threw a pick in the game. And the Saints did absolutely zero on the ground, 15 carries for 48 yards. That's about 3 yards per pop. Kamara, 6 carries, 21 yards. Then Taysom, 2 carries for 6 yards. Then your quarterbacks carried it a little bit. But your long run in that game was 7 yards from Spencer Rattler. It was a terrible offensive showing by the Saints at home against a tough defense with a good front. And your offensive line just hasn't played well enough to deal with these guys. And they certainly didn't in that game. So now you look forward to this game coming up on Sunday. And, Jordan, you've got the injury report as it's updated. So give me the names on that list and what we know.
All right, so from Mike Triplett, he said Alvin Kamara, Fuaga, Justin Reed, they're going to be out.
Okay.
Chris Olave was back at practice today for the second straight day. And Jonas Sanker was back after missing 1 day with a head injury.
Okay, and then Tyler Shuck will get this entire game. Obviously, that's a difference in this game. So you look at Kamara being out. That means you go back to what you were working with last week, which is theoretically a stronger dose of Devin Neal. And then you're going to go to Evan Hull and probably Taysom Hill. And last week, the Saints gave the ball to Devin Neal 14 times for 47 yards. That's 3.5 yards a pop. They gave the ball to Evan Hull 5 times for 15 yards. You can do that math. It's 3 yards a pop. And the Saints' long run in this game was 8 yards. We talked to Luke Johnson yesterday, and he said, he didn't mince words, like the Saints' running game is broken. And I talked all offseason about how there's a part of this that is acquiring for the future, and there's a part of this that's creating an ecosystem conducive to developing a quarterback. Whether that's Spencer Rattler, whether that's Tyler Shuck, whatever, you're trying to do that. And when you cannot run the ball at all, you're not doing that. And the Saints cannot run the ball at all. And what is the carryover from that? Well, I look up at the box score against Miami last week, and Tyler Shuck gets sacked 4 times. Because they don't have to care at all about you running the ball. Well, they're just going to pin their ears back and come. And they did. And they sacked your quarterback 4 times. And he was rushed and he was hurried. And Shuck, to his credit, does make some plays off schedule. That touchdown pass in the back of the end zone to Devon Vele was highlight reel worthy. It was awesome. But it's not something you can build your offense around. That's a talented player making a play, and I love to see that. But I need something a little bit more replicable, and the Saints haven't been able to create that. So for me going into this game with Tampa and understanding what they've got up front, which is a load, it's just hard for me. It's hard for me to sit here and go, all right, well, first establish the run game. It's a waste of breath. It's a waste of oxygen to go, well, they can't establish a run game. They haven't gotten the run game going really all year. They did it a little bit against the Giants. That's kind of it. So it falls on if the Saints are going to keep this game close. It doesn't fall on the running game. It doesn't fall on Shuck throwing for 335, which, look, Tampa's been giving up some plays through the air. They have allowed some damage to be done against their secondary. I mean, you don't have to go back a long way. You can go back last week against the Cardinals, and Jacoby Brissett, he threw for 301 last week. I wouldn't suggest he's an all-pro. The week before that, Matt Stafford was incredible. He was 25 of 35 for 3 touchdowns, 273 yards. Like, I don't expect Shuck to play at a Matt Stafford level. He might be the MVP of the league. But this is a susceptible defense through the air. Shuck's going to have to throw it a little bit, but ultimately the defense is going to have to play great. That's what you're going to have to do. And look, this Tampa team was held to 20 last week by the Cardinals, held to 7 by the Rams, held to 23 by New England, held to 23 by New Orleans, held to 9 by Detroit. Like, there's a sample size that suggests that the Bucs aren't as explosive as they should be. Now, Mike Evans being out has been a big piece of that. Becker has not had his weapons. He's having to rely a lot on Ibuka. The defense is going to have to keep the Saints in this game. That's the only chance. You're not going to run the ball a lot, and I don't count on Shuck to throw for 325. He could. I'm not counting on it. The defense is your hope here. And we've seen at times the Saints defense show up and keep the Saints around. The Dolphins scored 21. The Falcons scored 24. The Panthers scored 7. The Bucs scored 23. The Bears scored 26. Patriots scored 19. Giants scored 14. Like, you've been decent on defense. That's your hope. And I think that is why this line is less than I thought it would be. It's 8.5. I thought it might be closer to 10 because I just don't count on the Saints to score any. But ultimately, as I look at this game, my assumption is that the Bucs will cover because I don't trust the Saints offense to do much of anything. I will take Tampa to win this game 27-13. I don't think that's a disastrous effort, but more importantly than the scoreboard, what does Shuck do against a susceptible defense? The offensive line is going to have to help. But if Jacoby Brissett can go out there and throw for 301, then Shuck should be able to do something. Vele broke out a little bit last week. Olave returned to practice, should be back. I need to see something through the air in this game. That's more important to me than the scoreboard. Show me something through the air. That's what I need from the Saints. I think they lose the game 27-13, but I'd like to see something through the air. We'll see. Saints and Bucs from Tampa, 12 o'clock on CBS, coming up on Sunday. As we mentioned at the top of the segment, Deuce Gerald's inks with LSU. That's the news thus far of the day. And I do see now that Bryson Cooley, LSU commitment, has flipped to Alabama. That was very much expected. Offensive lineman, 6'6", 330 tackle, been committed to the Tigers since the summer, and he has flipped his commitment and signature to Alabama. That was expected, so that's the, I believe, third defection from LSU's class. That was always going to happen. You were going to have some attrition. That just happened here, kind of working on the fly. But you do get the commitment from a signature from Deuce Gerald's. Bryson Cooley flips, and so that's what you're looking at here from an LSU recruiting perspective. I want to talk about LSU's entire class, especially the defensive line, in 35 minutes. We will step aside for national headlines at SportsCenter. Chris Marler is going to be at the SC Championship game tomorrow. We'll talk to him from Atlanta about what he expects there, and we'll also talk about LSU's recruiting efforts over the course of the last 3 days in the second hour as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll pause for SportsCenter. Our Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish, and Shrimp. Hope your Friday's been great. Come back with us for one more hour on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
New sponsor here at The Hunt Palmer Show. Thrilled to tell you about Lifetime Roofing. Lifetime Roofing, Baton Rouge-based company, but they service the entire state of Louisiana, plus over in Houston as well. So no matter where you're listening to us, there's pretty good odds that Lifetime Roofing is there in your area. They're actively hiring right now, and I wanted to let y'all know that. One of the only legitimate W-2 roofing companies in the entire state. They offer benefits. They offer 401k. So if you're in that line of work, looking for somewhere to work, Lifetime Roofing is a wonderful option for you. They are veteran owned and operating. They do re-roofing inspections, and those inspections can give you the peace of mind to know that most of our most important investments, our biggest investment, our home, and certainly the family in that home, are protected. Of course, they can do repairs and re-roofs as well. So check them out online. It's lifetimeroofingla.com. Great new sponsor here on the Hunt Palmer Show. It's Lifetime Roofing. Check them out online, lifetimeroofingla.com.